welcome to the Veri podcast. And today with us we have Tiaan Bazuin, who's the CEO of the Securities Exchange in Namibia. I've been over to Namibia several times this year, and I've got a lot to ask Tiaan, so I'm looking forward to this one. So
Good.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
How we work with the podcast, basically there's 5 different segments in it. The first of all, we'll start off with getting to know you a little bit more of the person, backgrounds, interests, that type of thing, and then we'll move on to how you got into the industry. Thirdly, we'll go into your current role, and then into fourth place about the country and specifically. So we'll talk about Namibia, its eccentricities, characteristics, and about living there in general, and also opportunities that may be sitting there. And also then we'll finally move on to the future and how you see it moving forward on both personal work and obviously the countryside. So basically that's the format. So first off, we'll just kind of jump into the personal side of the conversation. And one of my favorite questions is when people actually get into this industry, or when people actually start out, they usually have an influence of some sort, usually a background, somebody that's kind of they've looked up to in the past that actually has pushed them in a certain direction, whether it be the sector they're currently in, but actually work in general. Is there anybody that springs to mind for yourself?
Any specific person? No, probably not. I think I kind of fell into the industry more than anything else. Certainly didn't plan it. So I studied economics and law in South Africa. Started off working in Namibia as a criminal prosecutor. Then I was a magistrate. Then went to the private sector and went into banking for a while. As the bank, we pitched for the financing for the second mobile operator in Namibia. We didn't get it, but they then asked me to come and implement it with the banks that did. Following that, we rolled out the network, built the company, and ended up selling it to Orascom, Egyptian multinational. And after I was involved in finalizing that transaction, one of the board members from the exchange actually gave me a call and said, have you ever considered working at a stock exchange? I said, no, I hadn't, but more than happy to look at it. And yeah, that was about 15 years ago. I've been the CEO for 13 years here now. So definitely didn't plan it. Although my thesis in law and economics was on insider trading, as luck would have. Maybe it was meant to be. I don't know.
Maybe handy.
Hadn't planned it though.
Fantastic. It's with the role. Well, we'll move on to the actual role and the job title. You know, the job title, and you've said that how that came about, but. There are a number of, I've been over to Namibia and spoken to people in the industry, stockbrokers, and they said there are eccentricities within that within that area, within the country, especially with it being paper. Do you want to explain to the listeners or the viewers how that works in Namibia?
Look, as it stands, it's currently still on paper. We have gotten our license for the CSD, so we are moving on from that. We have electronic trading in that we equities and bonds are running on electronic matching engines, but the clearing and settlement is currently still being done in paper. We hope to move away from that next year and dematerialize. That's certainly the intent. It's been cost prohibitive historically, and then once we found a deal that could work on the cost side of things, it became prohibited regulatory. And we were waiting for our financial infrastructure markets legislation. That's been delayed for a very long time. And finally, we got to the point where we could get a license even without that legislation under the old Stock Exchange Control Act. So yes, it's been a long time coming. I signed the contract with a vendor almost 12 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So we signed at the time, we were going to do the CSD first and then the bond trading system. We've already launched the trading system now. And now the other way around, but we are getting there. We've also done it in partnership with the central bank, so as to avoid some of the pitfalls that some of the other countries have done, where the exchange does a CSD and the central bank does their own CSD, and they end up taking another couple of years to try to talk to each other. So we've done that together, and I think that's probably going to serve us very well.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. So my experience in some of the countries is that almost the exchanges are kind of almost independent companies. They have their own, their profit margins, and they actually go out there and seeking the business. Is it the same in Namibia?
Yeah, so we're currently still a not-for-profit association. That same piece of legislation, in fact, prescribes that we have to demutualize, which I'm more than happy to. We've already started the process even without the legislation. But we have founder members as well as trading members. So it's not only the stockbrokers that have a stake in the business. The founder members were businesses in Namibia just after independence that put money into a trust without any expectation of return to actually start the stock exchange. So we are completely independent. We're licensed by a non-banking financial services regulator, but completely independent from anyone.
Okay. And how many
board is independent as well, so it's not the brokers running the board either.
Okay, but how many stockbroker companies are there in the country you work with? 4. Okay, just 4 licenses that are in existence. Is that correct?
Well, there's 6, but only 4 of them are actively trading.
Okay, okay. I think I'm aware of all 4. I'm sure I've got them on my list.
I'm sure.
It's
not a long list.
No, it's not a long list, and it's I think I've had communication with all of them, but yeah, it again, probably keeping to the format, but you mentioned about the coming from South Africa and moving. When was that?
Well, that was in 2001, if I remember correctly. So my wife's Namibian, so I've been a citizen for more than 20 years now. We studied together at university.
Okay.
So that's usually how it works in Namibia. Somebody goes to study in South Africa, and either they stay there or they bring somebody with.
Okay.
An importing system.
But there's a strong connection with South Africa as well, and can you again for the people viewing, could you probably talk about the economic connectivity between the two countries?
So Namibia became independent. What's it now? 32 years ago. From South Africa. It was a mandate country under the control of South Africa after it was no longer a colonial colony. So the ties with South Africa are immense. At the time of independence, we took all the legislation as it stood in South Africa to be law in Namibia. So we've had some development and some movement away from the legislative position, but a lot of it is in fact still the same legislation. Financially, the Namibia dollar is pegged to the rand on a 1-to-1 basis. And of course, many of the multinationals out of South Africa operate in Namibia. So it's extremely closely connected on an economic level.
So Namibians, if they're trading, let's say externally, they'll probably trade into South Africa with interest in that region rather than probably the rest of Africa or actually even outside of Africa. Is that right?
It's very easy to trade in South Africa because of the common monetary area. So you don't need exchange control approvals or any such steps. So it's very easy. You could literally trade on your credit card through one of the platforms on the JSE or one of the other exchanges. But yeah, so that there's definitely a very strong links there in terms of investment culture as well.
And again, for the viewers and the purpose of their education, could you just explain the actual exchange controls between yourselves and South Africa and pretty much the rest of Africa, I suppose?
Yeah, so within the common monetary area, those are the currencies that are pegged to the rand on a 1-to-1 basis. That is Namibia, South Africa, Eswatini, and Lesotho. There would be no exchange control procedures to follow in terms of moving money around. As soon as you go outside of that, you would have to go through a central bank process to get authorization to take funds out and stipulate the purpose and source of funds, etc., which is not an insurmountable task to do, but it is obviously an additional step. So when investing, it tends to be a lot more cross-border within the CMA.
Okay. Yeah, so it is doable. It's just a matter of actually it's a process.
Yeah, because everybody has a certain allowance that they're allowed to actually take out in terms of the exchange control, be it on holiday money or investments or whatever else. So it's not, like I said, it's not a massive process to follow, but it is easier to just do it locally.
Okay. So when you stepped into, well, your early career, let's talk about that. And what was your, let's say, your first job as such that you stepped out of university? What did you go into?
No, my wife and I started together as criminal prosecutors. So we
Okay.
traveled all through the country prosecuting, uh, yeah, I got to see the country in a particular way through doing that. But yeah, it was I always see that as almost a part of public service. I think it's very useful to actually spend some time in public service to have a better understanding when dealing with public service from a private sector perspective.
Okay. And what does your wife do now? She's still in the same industry, or?
But she's a practicing attorney, yes.
Okay. Okay. And that's in Namibia. But were you in Namibia when you were doing it together?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
It was. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
And
we started working directly out of university here.
Okay. And with the role you're currently in, of the CEO of the exchange, what would you say is when you first joined, what was the most demanding part of it?
I think with any new industry, it's certainly a learning curve just to understand the basics and have a real overhead view of the entire ecosystem before you start digging down into very specific areas such as trading systems and developing CSDs and clearing and settlement. I mean, it has a lot of components to it, but understanding the big picture, I think, is incredibly important to then see where improvements can be made. Because we identified quite early on that a CSD, we needed to move there, we needed to get there and dematerialize. But again, finding the right cost structure for that to work and finding the right technology partner with the right service and the right technical capabilities is a process in itself.
Okay. And the technology is there or is it external that you're working with, or is it onshore?
So we're working with STT. That's a South African company, Securities and Trading Technology. They've been doing the bond trading system for the JSE for many years, and they've rolled out CSDs in Dar es Salaam, Kenya, and multiple other all over the world by this stage. They've actually done quite a few now. So it's a tried and tested system. But like I said, at the time when we signed, they didn't have that long a track record yet. But
Okay.
yeah, it worked for what we needed.
Okay. Okay. And is there, do you see where the improvements need to be made, or do you think it's actually on the track, that everything is actually on track to be where you need it to be moving forward?
Oh, no, I'm quite sure everything's on track now. So when we launched the bond trading system, we actually had the CSD already running in the background. So it hasn't gone commercially live, but we know it's working on a technical level because that's being used as a master file administrator for the bond trade, for the bond trades.
Okay, that's great. And if you, looking back again, if bearing in mind the job that you're in at this moment in time, but if you were to see yourself or meet yourself as a younger professional, what advice would you give yourself for the future moving forward?
Probably not be so stuck on law as a primary driver. I think law is a wonderful background tool to have and experience in terms of what you've studied, but it can be applied in a much wider sense than just court work and normal lawyer work. I think oftentimes people pigeonhole themselves in terms of the profession they study, that they think it has to be applied to be a commercial or a litigant or a whatever specialized lawyer as such, while the skills probably lend themselves very well for a multitude of other professions.
Okay. And the people that you work with throughout Namibia itself, their backgrounds, are they mostly expats or the locals that you're working with in the sector? Is it a combination of them all?
In this industry, it's all locals mostly. Probably a couple of South Africans, but very, very few expats in the true sense of people from very far away. In some of the other industries, it's very much expat driven, but the financial services, certainly in Namibia, very much a local industry.
I found that with traveling around a number of countries and actually conversations, it seems to be moving back where potentially even the banks, where banks have had a presence in various countries, and they seem to either remove themselves. There seem to be a lot more local interest as far as the finance sector is concerned, which I find very refreshing as well.
I think, especially in the finance industry, you'll find that the bigger players have gotten to the level where they can enhance skills themselves, and whatever skills you might need in country, you can probably send somebody to, be it Cape Town, South Africa, or Johannesburg, and have them trained and come back with the necessary skill set. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, the financial services probably weren't at that level yet, and you'd see a lot more expats coming in from London or one of the bigger financial service centers, bringing those skills. And from what I've seen, certainly, I think all of that's available regionally now.
Yeah, I'd say my visits to Namibia, it comes across, although you're still with paper, and I know that's moving forward, but my way it's come across to me, it's more of a mature sector than a number of the countries. It's been around for a while. It's well trodden, and let's say everybody's in place that to actually make it a good financial hub in general.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I mean, the paper is the absolute exception to the rule, because just about every other spoke in the wheel is world class and really up to speed on where it should be. And like I say, the fact that we haven't rolled out the CSD has had many reasons as to the delays, but yeah, we're getting there. And the rest of the market really does operate very well.
Well, you're not the only one, of course. I mean, there's a number of countries in Africa that is exactly the same, and it's as long as there's the central depository, the register actually is there and controlled, then there shouldn't be an issue. I mean, I don't see the problem with it whatsoever.
Look, there's quite a few that have CSDs that aren't using them at all. Quite a few that have exchanges that have almost nothing listed. So
yeah. As far as Veri is concerned, I don't know I know we've not smoked before today, and my interest with to get you on to actually have a conversation was to get to know a little bit more about yourself, but also to find out a bit more about Namibia in general. I say I've been there a few times where we're onboarding one of the stockbrokers at the moment and one of the custodian banks, Nedbank, as we speak. So we're just tidying that up at the moment out of Namibia. But we've worked extensively in Zambia and Zimbabwe, and kind of creating a kind of ecosystem for the exchange for the advisors, asset managers, pension funds, stockbrokers, so that basically they can all work within it's one platform that they can all sit in. And one of the things with Namibia is what I wanted to do was going over there to explore the opportunities that were out there, and actually potentially, because what the intention is to what we've done in Zimbabwe, for instance, with this ecosystem, is to have one available in all the countries in Africa, and then all you're doing is generating a network between them, so it becomes a continental platform. So we've done my first 16 countries that we've targeted. We've now completed, if we include, which it looks as if it's all going to move forward with Nedbank. If you include that would be Namibia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Botswana, Nigeria, Kenya. I think that may be 7, and then we'll move on to the others thereafter. But I was curious as to what is the interest in Namibia for external investments as well, because I know that obviously Namibia now is struck oil, or has actually found oil. And I anticipate that the market over there is going to become very interesting as far as you're concerned, with opportunities. And
For sure.
So I would see a lot of interest coming in. I'm not sure so much sure at the short term whether it's going to be interest going out. Is that how you see it at the moment, or?
Okay, so the oil find has created immediate ripple effects in the sense that we have a lot of people that have already come in. I mean, if you went down to Lüderitz right now, you probably wouldn't be able to book a room because it's that overfilled with consultants, engineers, and everything else. That's going to spill over to the capital, and depending on the process of extracting the oil, it's going to have an impact on the broader coast as well. However, when Guyana discovered oil, about 5 years later, or 6 years later, they were extracting. And their GDP tripled, the market cap of the stock exchange tripled. And that's fairly comparable in terms of size as well as oil find. So that's probably the best reference we have at this stage. I think the impact is going to be immense, because even a small injection of capital into our economy has a big impact, and we're talking about a sizable injection. So what's going to happen is the rising tide will raise all boats, but you'll also find that local companies will need to expand to meet the various demands that this industry will have. I think they'll set up joint ventures, and they'll end up having to raise capital, look at bonds in terms of debt, just to expand to the point of meeting the demands that are inevitably going to come. And you're seeing some companies already prepare for this now, and I think some of them are not yet aware of just what's going to happen. With the people coming in, we've already seen some of the oil companies buying out commercial buildings. The next thing we're starting to see on the housing side and the rental market, especially in the top end, there's already been an impact as the companies are starting to take out long-term leases. So it's just the start of a snowball that's going to get bigger as it rolls down. But I think a lot of people are still underestimating what this is actually going to mean to the economy. And of course, the upside in terms of various industries that will be impacted directly. The banking side will certainly be doing lots of project finance. I don't think they have the capacity to even cover everything that will be required. So you'll probably have some tie-ups with South African banks, or quite frankly, some of the international banks as well, that might want to finance some of these projects that they're used to financing wherever in the world in terms of the specialized financing. So yes, there's going to be a lot happening. I have no doubt about that.
So have they done any projections as to how many more people they anticipate entering the country for work, or because, you know, however that may be, the knock-on effects, it's all the way down, you know, people entering, as you say, there's property involved. From property involved, there's, you know, furniture, there's moving, right? There's
exactly.
There's all the way, you know, the consumption of food. It ripples all the way down, and there's continued employment with all of those as well. Have they provided any projections on that?
I know there's been some studies done on it. I haven't seen details of that, but Namibia has a massive unemployment problem. So this is probably the Hail Mary we were hoping for some time. So it couldn't be more fortuitous in terms of when it's going to happen. The other limiting factor that is not yet dealt with is we are just coming out of a massive drought, and Windhoek was again running close to running out of water. So if we're going to have a lot of people coming in, then we need to look at the water situation. I know government has already approved another desalination plant. So there are various solutions certainly being looked at there. But yeah, then it still needs to be piped up to Windhoek from the coast. So there's a couple of real capital projects that we need to implement now to deal with what we know is going to be coming in the future.
And what about the supply of electricity? Is that something that actually is under control and actually can be ramped up quite easily, or?
Very, very important regional question to ask. So luckily, we've been looking at that even before Eskom was running into the real trouble that they had the last couple of years. So the regions electricity grid has been interconnected quite some time ago. So we were no longer just reliant on imports from South Africa. And our national power utility, for example, refurbished a electricity plant in Zimbabwe. That's being repaid in electricity. They have offtake agreements from Zambia and from a couple of other places as well, because we no longer have the preference agreement that we had with Eskom, because we used to have preference even when they were load shedding. South Africa and Namibia was still getting preference in terms of power supply, because it wasn't a lot we were getting from them and we were paying a premium. But now we are no longer in that position, but now we have multiple sources of electricity. So we haven't had load shedding. We haven't had any of the problems that our neighbors have been facing. Touch wood, that'll go on. But yeah, that's been going quite well.
Okay, that's good. Well,
we've also invested quite heavily now in renewables and various other sources of electricity. So that picture looks pretty good.
And is there an intent or a hope that someday you'll be self-sustainable on that, or not actually have to import?
I believe the hope is that we'll export.
You'll export, fantastic. Well, Zimbabwe needs it. Zimbabwe needs it, and Zambia. I think Zambia is down to 3 hours a day now. It's quite horrific. Yeah. Zimbabwe around 8 hours a day, and yeah, it's not brilliant at all.
So especially on solar, obviously Namibia is extremely well positioned. However, that has limitations because of what you do during the downtimes, etc. But the bottom line is, I think there's a lot of interest in that space, has been for a while, and some of the projects are actually going live quite recently. So there's very positive steps there. And I think the battery technology needs to catch up to the benefits we have in terms of solar, because that's the only part that's really still, it's not that it's bad, it's just very expensive. And as that comes down over time, I see that whole industry exploding.
Yeah. And well, as you say, with the demand of actually, you know, what oil will naturally bring, and the influx of labor, the influx of all, you know, all types of industries will actually just follow. They always do. I think that's going to be that's going to be very interesting to actually watch for, you know, the next few years. When do they anticipate they will be drawing on oil? How far away?
They indicated 5 years, which seems to be the normal lead time. The oil is very far out to sea as well as very deep down. So what I understand mostly is going on right now, or what they've determined, is what will be the most cost-effective process in terms of extraction. So, like I say, Lüderitz, if I understand correctly, then the Lüderitz port might have to be extended to accommodate everything that has to happen there. And all of these things need to happen simultaneously in terms of whatever needs to be done on the port, whatever needs to be done on housing, etc., as well as the actual offshore drilling platforms and processes, because it's more than one block that's found oil.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think there's 3 blocks that already have confirmed finds. Wow. So yeah, it's Total Energy, Shell, and another one. So there's going to be a lot of activity.
Yeah, it's going to be busy. As you say, they probably need to make double the size of Windhoek itself.
That's the part that I'm worried about, because I don't see how that can happen.
Well, there's plenty of space between Windhoek and the airport.
We've got the space. The space is not the problem. That we've got drove.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so yeah, let's. Okay, whilst we're talking about Windhoek and Namibia, if you just kind of give an overview to the listeners and the viewers as to a little bit about it, its climate, its flora, fauna, that type of thing. You know, what you do to go out, chill out, relax, and the places you like to go and see, things that actually, you know, on a tourist point of view, where you would, you know, suggest they would go. That you know, that sort of conversation. Yeah, sell me Namibia.
Oh, good. Okay, so Namibia is about 2/3 the size of South Africa, just to give it a sense. and it has 3 million people in it. So it's one of the least densely populated countries in the world. It really is the land of open spaces. To the south is largely desert, and to the north is actually quite arid. So there you've got all kinds of game parks. We have lots of natural parks in any case. Beautiful coast, long coast, lovely to drive on. We have some of the best roads in Africa. So I'm a very enthusiastic motorcycle rider, Harley Davidsons. So I love those. I love those open roads. That's
Me
really
too.
good fun. But obviously, anything outdoor living is great here in terms of people doing mountain biking and off-road biking or every other type of cycling. Yeah, it's hot. It's got a high elevation, similar to Johannesburg. Being a desert country, obviously, it's quite hot, and the winters can be quite cool. But yeah, not uncommon. There's plenty of bush, plenty of animals. Your normal African safari type events all over the place. And at the coast, there's all kinds of fishing and quad biking in the dunes and sand surfing, paragliding, and everything else you can think of. Extreme sports at the coast is actually quite popular.
And so you'll take the bike, the Harley, up the Skeleton Coast, will you?
Well, no, it's not great in the sand. No.
No.
But yeah, where there's roads, you can go. But yeah, a lot of the guys like to go down to Cape Town and do a proper ride down.
Yeah, yeah. That's
2,300
well, I'm in between Harleys at the moment, but sold one. Well, I've sold one and bought another one, but it's a project bike, so I'm in the process.
That takes a while.
Yeah,
Good
6 months. But that's okay. That's all right. I'm okay with that. Just want to bike that exactly how I want it to be. So it's going to take
exactly. Yeah,
bit of fun.
That's half the fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I suppose all the other questions as far as Namibia is concerned that we spoke about, obviously, the oil and what's going to become happening there. But anything else that's happening in Namibia? Anything else you think that actually will move moving forward?
So historically, we've been very successful and very attractive in terms of our mining industry. So at one stage, we were the third largest uranium producer in the world. After Fukushima, obviously the bottom fell out of that market, but it's coming back very strongly now. So we tend to have low-grade uranium, which means it's dispersed over a large area, but fairly easy to get to. So we've got multiple uranium mines already. We've got some gold and copper and other commodities as well, but uranium really is quite a big market. And as that storms back, we can see our mining industry and the investment into mining already having picked up exponentially. It's a lot. So that's good. And there's a lot of local expertise on that as well, with people that have been through the mining stages and built mines, been part of building the mines themselves. So we have a lot of local expertise there. You still see some expats in that space, mostly the Australians. Typically, you have the exploration companies raising their capital in Australia or in Toronto. Those are the two exchanges that are really specialized for that. Even South Africa doesn't raise capital for mining because they have all kinds of tax breaks and benefits there. So they tend to raise their capital there, and then they allocate it here, and they oftentimes do a list on the NSX as well. So we have quite a fair amount of mining companies that are listed here as well, mostly through dual listings, and then yeah, everybody has a good sense of what's happening in that market.
And well, again, you've got with that and oil, you're probably going to need an extension to the country. Never mind Windhoek, but I think there's going to be a lot happening for you. What do you see as far as the finance industry is concerned? The future of that, and is it something that you see there's maybe because of what's happening through the other sectors is going to affect obviously the finance sector? I think you mentioned that earlier. What do you see the future as the future for finance in Namibia?
Like I said, I think that's going to explode just because there's going to be so much capital that needs to be allocated. into projects that are viable, that are obviously viable because of the size of the fund and the industries that are involved. I mean, if you've got a reasonably sized company that gets a contract from a Shell or a Total, you're not, based on that contract itself, you're going to be able to basically raise capital to say, okay, I've got it, I can do this, I need so much to make it work. You know, we're used to this type of financing with SMEs, where you go to the bank and say, I've got this contract, I need to lend the money to finalize it. I think you're going to see the same type of projects just on a massive scale. And that's where I see the joint ventures and the rest coming into it as well, and real growth and real employment boom coming through. So the banks are obviously going to be overrun with financing requests. And I think the exchange will be a perfect tool to raise capital and even to get debt in the form of bonds as well. And I can definitely see all sides of the market tapping in, because we have quite a substantial captive savings pool because of our domestic asset regulations. Our pension funds and long-term insurance funds have to invest 45% of their funds locally. And right now, quite frankly, there aren't enough listed assets to meet that need. So a lot of it's going into government bonds. But you also then find that that creates a very fertile ground for corporate bonds to also be taken up and be oversubscribed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine most of the time, because of the limitation of what availability well, I would imagine there's a lot of illiquidity. So basically the market isn't liquid. It's because everybody's a buy and hold placement. But
as with most of Africa, that's very normal. Most of our markets have these types of regulations, and most of us don't have enough assets to actually meet the requirement. So you have a lot of buy and hold, but that's why it's important to have a good retail base in your mix as well, so that you have enough trading to give you proper price discovery, which I think we have. However, for international investors, if they want to come in and buy a sizable chunk in a company, then it can be challenging to meet that demand.
Yeah. No, I think what I was kind of getting at was because of the let's say the pension companies, trust companies, life companies will buy large, proportions of bonds when they become available, sit and hold limitation. It also, in my mind, it also gives, with what's happening, what's going to happen with the oil industry, with the uranium industry, there's also going to be a lot of demand, not just locally, I think actually internationally.
Yeah.
And when there's demand, obviously that's increasing value. So you'll be paying above bar for a bond. There's that actually itself creates, with demand, it will create liquidity, because people will be interested in playing in the market to actually take a value at some point, and that gives you liquidity.
So on the bond side, there is a fair amount of liquidity exactly for that reason. So in the last couple of years, especially after the oil position, we've seen players in the market that have been out of the market for 15 years plus come back into it and buying bonds at the long end of the curve. So the fundamentals in terms of how our economy is being viewed has definitely changed. We've also seen Namibian bonds were usually selling at a slight premium to South African bonds, and that's flipped around now. Our bonds have actually become cheaper.
Okay, so you're buying under par. Okay, that's great.
So that shows you the demand that comes through that wasn't there 5 years ago.
Wow. Wow.
So people have taken notice. The oil discovery is not the only thing that's going right here, but obviously that one just put it on everybody's radar.
No, to me, it just seems to be everything's going in the right, as you say, going in the right direction, and then the fundamentals have actually been put in place. And as you say, it's that kind of utopia where oil comes to play as well.
Yeah. Oh, look, the right thing after COVID, I mean, things were not looking great. You know, the deficit was too big, the debt burden was too high, and there wasn't anything particularly good at that stage. Like I say, uranium was still very depressed at that stage as well. And now things really have taken a positive turn, and the market sentiment, as much as the real world economy hasn't changed that much, the sentiment has changed a lot.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that. I've enjoyed going over there, and everybody, it just seems to be, well, as you pointed out, you would walk into any hotel or any office, and there'd be, a banner up, and there'd be something to do with oil, something to taking up every single space, the foyers, it was
Exactly.
everywhere,
Yeah.
everywhere.
No, it definitely is top of mind.
I might not be able to actually come back as quickly as I wanted to, but never mind. There you go. I'll have to check. I'll have to book in hotels a lot more in advance. Okay, so just a couple more things. One being, okay, so anything that you would like to tell the audience about yourself, to let them know, maybe nothing, maybe something of interest about yourself, maybe that most people wouldn't know, or would like to know, or you would like to tell them. If not, then and also the question, um, as far as you're concerned, what we always like to know is for you to actually have the floor and say, okay, this is basically what I want to tell everybody about, or this is what's coming up, or it could be, you could tell anybody anything really. It could be about the football game at the weekend. We don't mind, but it's just kind of a summary as to, yeah, what's coming up, what's going on in life, basically what you're looking forward to, that type of thing.
I think on the Namibian side of things, obviously it's a very exciting time. There's a lot of good things happening. Part of what we're busy doing is amending our visa regime as well. We've already implemented a nomad visa whereby people can come for 6 months at a time and do remote work. But the next step that's being drafted in regulatory form is a retirement visa, which I think will be very exciting for many countries. We already have a lot of German people coming here during their winter times, but this could really open the door for the whole region in terms of retirement alternatives for people that want to go to a more safe, secure country that doesn't necessarily have some of the drama in some of our neighboring countries. And then we also have an investment visa regime that's being drafted as part of that process, which all of these visa regimes the NSX gave a lot of input on, but that one specifically we proposed be modeled after your own Mauritian investment visa scheme, with my recommendation having been to come in just a little bit underneath your cash requirement to make it competitive.
I know all about that one. That's what I'm on.
So I do think there's some low-hanging fruit that we'll be able to get to in the short to medium term, and both of those I think will be very, very attractive, especially to the South African market, and that's going to have a real ripple effect immediately as well, because those retirees will probably flock to the coast, and that'll be very good for that side of the economy as well.
On the coastline, what are the town cities that people might look for?
So Swakopmund is probably the best known of the tourist towns. Beautiful coastal town. But then there's Walfish Bay, Henties Bay, and even Lüderitz further to the south. And I suspect all of those would reap the benefits of the retirement visa scheme, while Windhoek would be well positioned for the investment side of it. And after COVID, the flights are starting to come back. Some of the international airlines are starting to fly again. I recently saw even Air Botswana is now flying, because Air Namibia was liquidated, having been a loss leader for a very long time, which I think was the right decision from government side to stop that. But we have lots of other airlines now flying in, and as I understand, there's more international ones coming in as well, which then transforms Namibia somewhat into a hub for that as well, because outside of South Africa, closest destination that I would see even closely as a hub is probably Kenya, and then Ethiopia. So yes, it gives a lot of options, and I think that's very useful for us.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's it seems to be routes opening up more and more, but as you say, that I think it's going to be driven with the oil as well. So the demand is definitely going to be there. So the airlines will have to accommodate it.
Exactly.
So
That's
yeah,
good for us.
everything, all routes to Namibia.
Yeah, exactly. Not a bad time to be here.
No, not a bad time at all. It's going to be very exciting.
I think so.
Look, thank you very much for your time, Tiaan. It's very, very kind of you. And really enjoyed actually finding out a bit more about yourself and Namibia. I hope to be out there as soon as I can.
Well, give us a shout when you are.
It'd be nice to actually catch up when I do. So,
Awesome.
yeah, thank you very much indeed for your time
Thanks
today.
for having me. Appreciate your time. Cheers.
Okay.